Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode. It's wonderful to have you all here today. Today, I'm very honored with a special guest, someone that I don't know so well. So it's going to be cool to explore our connection and where this conversation goes. But I'm really grateful to have Mandy Horton with us today. So welcome, Mandy.
Thanks, Jacob, and hi to everyone.
So we're a couple of Kiwis in New Zealand, and we're not too far away from each other at the moment. And we just was talking about that. And you were saying that you've been living in the area for 25, 30 years. And I was just looking on your website. You hold a lot of light. There's a lot of beautiful offerings there that you have.
Mm. Yes, I came into the world aware. And when I say that, I knew why we were here this lifetime. And yeah, it took a bit of finding my way in life to get me to where I am today in the sense of what I offer. But yeah, I had a lot of really spooky stuff happen to me when I was a kid that was I just didn't have anyone to talk to about it. So it was suck it up and just, try and get through it in my own way, which I did. And really got involved in talking with spirit more so in around my teens. Started off by doing some seance stuff on my own in the room, by myself and scaring myself silly and, all of that sort of thing. But there was a lot of energy around me as a kid. And the way that I really settled myself in was by just immersing myself in nature. I'd just go deep into the bottom of the forest where we were, the bush, and on the farm, and fantails would come around that basically be sitting on my shoulders and up in the tree talking to me. And that was my peace. That was where I found the quiet and yeah, I was left alone basically from, yeah, I had a lot of dark energy, dark spirit around me,
Mm,
which I learned later on that was part of the work that I do, obviously. And so, yeah, there was a mission that I went on in respect to finding out, I needed to figure out why I feared it so much, So to get through it, I investigated through myself and spirit, my guidance, whoever that was, I had no idea. I was just, I just had so much going on around me. I couldn't really separate it up. But
mm.
I just had this innate belief in being okay, being safe, being protected. I don't know where that came from or what that was. I had no idea at the time. Understand it a bit more now, but yeah, it was a big big mish.
Yeah, sounds incredible. And I feel you probably didn't really have anyone to go to, like,
No.
yeah, back in those times. We've evolved so much and there's so many more people actively out there and connecting and working with spirit. But, 20, 30 more years ago, it definitely wasn't quite like that.
No, no, I was born 58, so at that time there was nothing. There was one medium clairvoyant lady that lived an hour away from me. I grew up in Taihape in the middle of the north, basically, North Island, and my dad was a shearing contractor farmer. Mum, we had the property in town, and then we had the farm out in the country, and so there was this offer and being able to get into nature. We had an acre of land around the house in Taiape. So my brother had a horse and we had lots of, stock. Now and then dad would bring a stray home from the farm or whatever, raise puppies, all that sort of thing. So there was a lot of activity and life of nature around me. And mum and dad lived very much in that way, even though like I talked to them later on in life and said, did you realize you were so connected, like aligned with spiritually with nature and your being? And they were like, no, no, we were just, living our life doing what we love doing. And so that for me was a big reflection of where to find peace, where to come into alignment and heart and live that way. So, I had that, but I definitely had nobody around me to talk to. My mum was she would be, we would term her as an anxious person today, with all the anxiety on the planet with everyone. It's sort of like there's that line of it, it's come through lots and lots of people today have that anxiety, and mum was one of those people. She was afraid of life in many ways. And her solace was nature. She was just in the garden all the time, outside, you know. So yeah, but I had a great grandmother on mum's side who was somebody that I knew she knew I knew. It was that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
she passed when I was about 13 and I never really got to talk to her about anything. So
Mm.
but through spirit later on, and she said that she knew, and she actually used to read tea leaves, things like that. So there was a bit
But
of a
you didn't
connection.
know that.
No, I didn't know that. I knew as a kid, I knew, but I didn't know. You know what I'm saying? We
Mm,
never
yes.
we never talked about it. But
Yeah.
yeah, there was that knowing. So
And
that was sort of comforting.
did she ever give you any kind of words that now you can reflect on, or through talking with her in spirit, that you can kind of go, oh, your grandma said that to me, that to just because she knew that I could see and sense so much, and that helped, or not, that didn't really happen either.
No, no, she didn't. There were so many children around when we were younger.
Mm.
Um, so she'd never really singled anyone out, to be honest. Yeah, it was quite a strange thing. It was sort of distant, but not either. It was weird.
So you would have had a
We
lot
didn't
of
really get
families around you.
one-on-one time with her, that
You're
sort of
right.
thing. Yeah.
Because there was lots of families living together and lots of children and everything.
Yeah, well, it was a big homestead, and
Mm.
Nana Curry, she had five daughters, and most of them lived there till into their adult life, and their children ended up living there, like it was a cycle of of that type of thing. It was very much the family home. And one of those big, big places with the big wide middle passageway, the hallway down the middle of the house. And I remember all us grandkids or great grandchildren used to play bull rush in the hallway, like it was so big,
It's
you
where
know?
we did. Yeah, we were allowed to
Yeah,
back in those days. We
yeah,
actually used to play bull rush on the concrete tennis court at school.
yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah,
Crazy. But,
yeah.
that's a different world. And yeah, nowadays,
Mm,
just
mm.
you don't even let your children outside,
I
most people.
know. Yeah, it's got a little ridiculous, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So nature was your thing, was your savior. So can you share, like, for you, what that was? What is it about nature that helped you come more into a place of peace with
Mm.
yourself and your sensitivities?
It felt and even today, I sit a lot on my porch and commune with nature here, and it definitely grounds me in, obviously. That's an earthing thing. We need to do that. And a lot of us are living out of our body. We're not completely grounded in. We're often, whenever there's pain or emotional, physical pain or emotional pain, we tend to leap out of body. And a lot of women are cut off from the waist down. Men are from waist up. A lot of the time, there's a lot waking up more in that way, though. Men, obviously, but they've always been awake from the waist down. And it was sort of the opposite way for women. We were shut off from waist down. And I think that's based over history of how women have been treated. And even in this life, it's still continuing in respect to, a lot of abuse and sexual abuse and all those things. And that's just where we've been. So for me, there was whenever I came into nature, it took me into heart. It really anchored me into my body and allowed me to connect to the wider, the space around us that is us. It's our field. And it just really aligned me. It really calmed me down. It was the place where I found that peace. It was just, there wasn't, you sort of get tired of the human, and what that is, and our patterning, our emotional program. And for me, I had a bully brother, so for me there was this peace when I was away from home, in nature and immersed into that. Um, so yeah, it was beautiful, and for me, um, it feels like it's bringing life back into your field, into your body. It's like the cells activate. It brings all of this life force that we feel in us, or don't feel. A lot of people don't feel it, but for me, I've always felt it, and it's like it tingles through me. There's this aliveness. The cells start speaking more, or, humming, singing. Vibration comes back in a different way. It's a beautiful thing.
Sounds beautiful. Yeah, I can resonate. Do you feel that that's a remembrance kind of experience, or it's an acknowledgement, or of like this the nature spirit and seeing you and you feel, or you seeing them and feeling that aliveness? So there's like a reflection of each other, or what?
Definitely
What?
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely a reflection, and the remembering for sure. Because we get caught up in the in life, human life, emotional life, and and physically our body's calling us to sit, to be quiet, to still, to just reflect and come inward. And nature, when we're in nature, there's not the outside distraction so much. Sometimes, I get a lot of chatter from nature. Um, Connecting in with Kāori and the ancestors, the ancients, I often get downloads or messages. It's more conversation. And, that can be a little distracting sometimes rather than that. But again, that also those messages or that communication, because we're in communication with everything all the time. And when we actually pay attention to it, there's often a lot that aligns with where we're at and what we might require at the moment, of that time. And yeah, it's a beautiful thing. But it's I feel today, and you know, we were talking about the for me, children are losing their imagination. Like we grew up in a different time. I know I feel like I grew up in the best time. Um, years wise, and what was happening on the planet at the time, even though there weren't a lot of people that were seemingly awake as such to their higher purpose or their actual true being. Um, but it was a calmer space. There was a lot more sort of peace within it. And growing up as a young kid in that time, there was more community. We were looked after by, if we went out, I mean, so many times mum got rung to be told what I was doing. you know, and it used to really bug me. It was like, oh my gosh, I wish they'd just mind their business. But actually, what they were doing was it was a community raising the children at that time, and looking out for them. And today that's been lost. And I
Yeah,
see
for
that
sure.
it's starting to sort of come back in again. But the more that our children can be out in this beautiful energy of nature. And I have to say, I feel New Zealand's nature is always kept a very high frequency. Um, and and I can feel that here, particularly in the Northland, I've travelled a lot down the island and things, and I find it denser as I go down. And I'm sorry for
Mm,
anyone who lives, down that end more, but Northland is absolutely humming.
yeah.
And people are getting drawn up this way, and I can see why. It's the nature here is definitely alive, and it's definitely carried a high frequency from day one for me. In all land of New Zealand, though, I feel the nature has, but in connection to humanity, yeah, there's quite a lot of density still out there.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. I really feel that as well. I've lived in many places throughout Aotearoa, New Zealand, and I just always love coming to Northland because the frequency is so different. There's so much more space, energetically, I find. And, if you look at the land, it's, yeah, they haven't got any big cities going on and all that kind of stuff. And sure, there's some, darker kind of areas. And there's also always stuff like
Yeah.
that, from past journeys and interactions that's there. But yeah, it is really special. And I just find every time I come to Northland, I live up as well, just like you say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. It's very cool. And I think, I was moved up. I've shifted so many times, and it's like that movement of just moving myself, and being guided to move into this space for sure. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Mm. So up there, are you very proactive with what you offer with people around you, or are you more online, or is it a combo of both?
I'm by both. Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. It was a bit, because I'm what I call myself as one of the pioneers, being my age and what there was our range of people that came in at that time to just be the pioneers that broke through the old tradition and what was happening on the planet basically to allow or to bring forward those who have come in behind us in a sense. We've made space for them to just be who they are and create who they are. But we had to, we had I feel like I want to say more to deal with in a sense because we were brought up in such tradition and so much of the old patterning. And for us to come through, like for myself, I had to really move out of the old traditional way of what my family had always done or whatever. And it was like, well, for me, my parents, or particularly my dad, um, and brother, just didn't think that I worked because I didn't go 9 to 5. I didn't go to from my home to a space to work and work for somebody else, or it was quite big in changing ways that people thought, and not even trying to, but just for me to be able to get through, I had to change my own way of thinking as well. Of course, we all do in some way, but I feel like the conditioning was way more solid in a sense
Mm.
in that time, whereas now we've morphed it more and it's like it's more flexible, it's moving and it's shifting, whereas there was more solid and it was
More
really,
rigid
oh my
back there.
gosh, yeah, bashing
Yeah.
head against brick wall, like actual. So it took a lot to keep going, and I'd say to Spirit often, I say spirit, I mean my spirit, well, this is I'm going to get a haircut and a real job, because this is just sort of so hard and it's not really doing what I feel it could do. But I always kept, having to just wait. It was like a waiting game, and that was really tiring. And even though I say wait, it wasn't because we're still, we're not just stopped still and we're waiting at a red light. It was more that we just all had to, yeah, wait in a sense for everything else to move into its position for this movement now
Mm.
that we're in, It was like waiting for the tsunami wave to catch up and then we'd be shifted on. And it feels exciting. I mean, it always has for me. My mum woke up, my head was out. I birthed myself basically 5 minutes later, and I've just been gung ho, and Spirit have quite often had reins on me, going, "Hang on a minute, you just got to wait. It's not time yet." I go, "Oh my God, just hurry up!" I've just been so impatient. I just knew why we came in. And it's like, okay, come on then, let's everyone get on with this. And it seemed like everyone was trying to avoid it. It was like run in the opposite
Was it?
direction. Yeah. So I've had a giggle at myself for many years. I rushed, wanted it all to just rush, hurry up.
Mm. Yeah, well, I guess when you are so aware, and so connected in that way, and you can see the potentials, let's say, and you're already sensing them and
Mm,
knowing in yourself, I can understand how you would just be like, well, this is the life I'm here for. Let's just do it. And
yeah.
yeah, there's many people, that will know there's the first wavers, second wavers, and third wavers as well, and the first wavers they often feel energies up to 5 years before they even come to the planet, and by the time they arrive, they're like, yeah, yeah, okay, finally we're here. Everyone else is like, woohoo. I can
Yeah.
understand that. But what I find really interesting with listening to you, what you were sharing, it's come into my awareness that how we talked about when we were younger. And there was, you said community. I also felt there was a lot of freedom, because there wasn't so many other things taking our energy. So we explored ourselves. We were outside. We were playing. So there was this whole new freedom of space that was there to find ourselves in and be creative and expressive. And yet, um, our parenting and all that was very rigid. And then now we look at it and say, well, actually, there's more flexibility in that because yet the children aspect of it is very difficult because there's so much interaction. It's almost like in some ways they're flipped. They're not replaced each other. They're different frequencies, but it's interesting how that's kind of flipped over
Mm,
and the upbringing hasn't got that freedom to express because there's so much interaction with everyday life and yeah, computers and phones and
yeah.
social ways that aren't so nice, and things like that. And of course, that was there, but the world's so small now that you've got a phone and it's
Yeah.
easy to get to people and things.
Mm,
And when we're not doing so well, I find we tend to get into those places. Just another form of addiction, isn't it? That's doesn't
yeah.
serve us and distracts us.
Mm, definitely that takes us away from nature. Like actual, and I so many times I'm driving into town or whatever, and I'm seeing all these people walking along the street. They might have gone out for a walk, but they've got their earpods in and they've got their phone in their hand. They're not actually engaging with what's going on around them or in that space of stillness or silence within. Um, and that I find sad, and like I say, I think children have lost their imagination, which is their creativity. And yeah, where it's going, who knows? But I think there's, in saying all that too, I see how many are pulling out of that pathway in the sense of taking them away from, and more families now are coming back to, um, connecting more into community and bringing more of that, what was around. Like we could walk home at, whatever time at night and play out till dark. We weren't afraid. There was nothing to be afraid of. I don't know that I think Taiape had one murder in the whole time of my life there, which seemed really random, but it was like there wasn't the crime like there is today. There wasn't any of that stuff going on. It was just so safe. And we were just talking about my granddaughter who's 5, and my daughter said, I wouldn't even let her walk to school on her own now, Mum. You know, even if we were only 5 minutes up the road, I wouldn't let her. And that's so sad. It's really sad, but it is what it is. And I think, for me, I'm seeing more of what I would call the new earth coming in, the new world, the new peeps, we're all
Yeah.
starting to build and this is really exciting. I find that really exciting. How it'll go, who knows, but we're
Yeah, it's
doing
hard to know, isn't it? I feel, well, it's because it's New Earth, that word new, it's exactly what it is,
mm,
isn't it? So
yeah.
it is all unfolding as it's meant to be, I guess. And there are a lot of amazing conscious children coming through that
Yes.
will be our teachers that, as long as they're looked after and given an environment
Mm.
where they can be themselves, yeah, it feels incredible. So do you have any sense of or do your team talk to you about how that may play out, or what's required. Like, is there nature schools or things like that need to happen to help bring in the new earth, bring it into being?
Yeah, I got a lot through the COVID era. Um, which was, a beautiful blessing in many ways. I know a lot of people don't see it like that, but it actually was, and I think it has been. But it
Yeah.
was definitely a turning point, and I know in that space before, I consciously was bored, and I was feeling like that just before the 4/4, our 4th of April. And that bit of a portal we had going on then was quite powerful for me, but it was that I was seeing that consciousness was bored, and even now we're seeing the same things written in different words, but the same message basically all over Facebook, Instagram, everywhere, YouTube. There's nothing new that's coming forward. And I just get really bored with it. I'm that hurry up, let's get on. It's like, okay, I've had enough of all that now. What else, And I'm looking for what else. And I'm asking. I've always been somebody who asks, and I know that's a something that I've taught all the way through is ask and ye shall receive. Like that's actually something that actually happens when you
Yes.
ask for something, because until we do, we just basically, and even that going with the flow thing is sometimes a cop out. It's like, yep, okay, but where is the flow taking you? Like, actually, is it where you're really wanting it to go, or is that where your heart's desiring? Um, so in the COVID, I was seeing that, gosh, that was a big journey, for all of us, wasn't it? But in there, I was seeing how, and I kept using the word pods, that the pods, there were going to be pods of children, and I kept getting groups like around 6 to 10 that were going to be brought through or taken out of the mainstream and lots of homeschooling, but they were going to be um, brought together into group, like so that person that might have been mandated out of her beautiful job at school as a teacher would become the pod teacher, so there were going to be groups like that that were forming. And so many parents took their children out of school at that time and started homeschooling. And I had quite a few, did a lot of readings and things and connecting in with people and their potential and opportunities that might be coming forward for them. And what I kept seeing, what I kept getting were a lot of teachers coming in at that time and midwives actually as well, which was really, it just started, there's a theme. I always get these themes, and see what I'm sort of showing what is not available at the time and what could be. And so then there's this little seeds being sown with ones that get brought in that are showing these a design of something that starts formulating, in respect to the midwives and starting their own clinics, their own way of birthing and bringing in new ways with women that are birthing these beautiful children in. And taking them out of the mainstream, because all the maternity wards and things also, it wasn't safe to have your children in those places anymore, so there was a lot of that being shown. And these children I was showing were going to be more brought up through nature and not in buildings so much, but in actual outdoor schoolings. And that's all started shifting into there. I mean, it was already starting, but that really took a dive, like mainstream schools. There's a wait list now for people that are trying to get approved to homeschool, so there's like so
Oh,
many on the waiting list, yeah. And I just see new systems, and systems probably not the word, but I don't know what else to use in respect to schooling and different things that are starting. It's already been created, and it's just allowing that to unfold more, I suppose. But yeah, it was wonderful to see because a lot of parents, they're very passionate about doing the right thing for their children, which is awesome. And the other thing
yes.
that I saw a lot of was because I do a lot of energy you know, energy intuitive. So I go into homes and intuit what the energy's happening, what's happening in their home and what might be affecting different things. Because I often get called in to clear children's homes. They're having nightmares or there's a lot of, yeah, really weird stuff going on. So anyway, I go in and what I was finding, which was really interesting because when I go in and intuit what's going on, um, there can be all sorts of things, earthbound spirit, that are connecting in and wanting to be released. So they connect and cause a bit of ruckus, and then there's this movement, where they get moved on. But what else was happening was there was a lot of times where there wasn't actually something energetically sitting around. And what I do once I've been into a home, I then come back in energetically later on, either that day or the next day. And I check above and below and, see what else, and if there's anything I've missed. But what I was actually finding was these children not having anything around them that was upsetting them, but yet they were in terror nightmares. And families weren't sleeping, they had children in their beds, or, some children actually wouldn't even go to sleep. Like they'd fall asleep eventually, but they were really resisting. And one lady whose child actually had to go into surgery and have anesthetic. And the mother said, look, this kid doesn't sleep. You won't get this child to get even with anesthetic. And the doctor said, cool, yeah, of course we will, surgeon. They had to double dose that child because he would not go to sleep. He wouldn't go out, even with anesthetic. So there's a fear. And I was like, what is going on here? And what happened, what I started doing and how I work is that I might connect in, yes, definitely with energy around and my guidance myself. But what I do when I check back in is I actually go out of body and I track. And so what I do with that is I was tracking the children. Once I knew they were asleep at a time that I thought they would probably be in bed and asleep, is that I would go out, track them and follow where they were heading, right? Because they come out of body at night. And so what I found was that they were actually living two bodies on the planet, and that their other body was in a war zone somewhere. And so nighttime was the active time in this war zone for our children here and are sleeping. And so there was this terror, and they often, one child was around 10, 11 years old, and he was obsessed with war. And he was having these terrible nightmares, and he was able to describe for me what the nightmares were. And it was everything that I'd been picking up with all these little babies, little ones that couldn't speak. And the only time that it stopped for that boy or for any of these children is when that body in that war zone has done its time. But up until then, we couldn't change it. There was a contract. That was what was happening. So it was, but when I sort of, it was like, why is this happening? And maybe it's been happening forever, but I hadn't picked up on it until just in the last maybe 4 years or so, maybe, yeah, 4 or 5. Um, and then what I've discovered was that it was like they were quite, and I say new soul, apparently there aren't any new soul. We're all soul and that's it. Never mind how old or whatever length of time. Time's not a thing, of course. So it's that we refer to things like I've always called myself an old soul. I know I've had many incarnations here on the planet. Um, and everywhere else, but it was like that. So I don't know. I'm saying new souls. I felt like they had not had what I kept understanding was that they hadn't had the experiencing that we might have had or that I had had in experiencing coming into form. So there was a fast track, and it was because of the time we're in now that they were fast tracking their experiencing and going from one
Mm,
extreme, like actual one extreme to the very opposite. It was in like for me, it was a little insane. It was like, oh my God. But that's what they were choosing to do. And the poor parents, like when they realized, when I explained this, because the first few times I was like, wow, this is like out the gate actually. But in trying to explain it to the parent, they're like, but when are we going to get some sleep? I said, well, I'm sorry. I can't do anything about this because this is this baby's soul contract. And we can't interfere with that. And the only time I can is if somebody's stepped in that is actually going against universal laws, and disrupting to a point where it's actually, yeah, it's just not kosher. So in respect to that, you might be able to do something, clear them out or change the program a bit. But other than that, these parents had to just suck it up until whenever it settled down. It was really interesting. And it's still going on. There's still children that I've been tracking that are still experiencing that way.
crazy. Wow, that's incredible. I've never heard of that. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's such a bizarre situation, isn't it?
Hmm.
Um, and like you say, yeah, what can you do? Because it's their choice. They chose to have that experience for
Yeah.
their evolution.
And we've lived multiple bodies. I know I've had another body on the planet. She was a high court judge in Italy, French
Mm.
judge actually, but she was actually at the time, because I was having these really uneasy like feeling like I was being watched. It was like all this old fear. And I was like, what on earth am I doing? Like, what's going on? Because in my home, I felt so safe. I could walk around, no lights, or outside, no light, whatever. It was all good. But all of a sudden, I started getting these really weird energy feelings and feeling fearful and didn't want to go out at night out my door, all of that sort of thing. And I went in to investigate that, and I woke up one night with this name, and now I can't even remember the name, but it was a French name, and every time I woke, this name was just being implanted, and I thought, right, I've remembered it when I woke up. Went straight on to Google to find out about this, and this woman was a high court judge, French, and she had just taken out the Italian mafia leader.
Oh,
And she had her yeah, they'd bombed her home. And so she was, yeah. And it just my whole body just said, that's my other body. It was interesting because that was the first time that it had come up for me. Um,
mm.
And then I was very much connected to another body, I'd say myself again, who was in the war zones in Afghanistan, from what I could understand. And he actually felt me right behind him when I realized that this body I'd tracked myself, and it was like, oh my gosh. And I was watching him walking in front of me right here, like as close as this computer is to me, and he felt me. He turned around and looked at me, and all I could see was this light that I was behind him. And I thought, if anything, he's going to get comfort from my light. And I just, was very much aware of the times that I was with him and present. Um, yeah, I believe we have multiple bodies. We're living multiple experiences. We're multidimensional. We
Yes,
have
we are.
many experiences happening at the same time. And that's a bit of a head trip. It's taken me years to get my head around no time, no past life. And I've experienced energetically going into cellular memory many, many, many times and experiencing living in a different life. And that feeling so real. It was like, I'm not making this up. Like, this is not a story I'm telling myself. I can feel it, the energy, the emotion involved in the experience of that time and space. And so, yeah, it was like, how do we not have past life? How is this all happening right now? And that there is like, for me, I get this image. because I question, I go, okay, show me what is this, and then when I get that, I go, and what else, So I go into it and into it and into it, and I always have. I'm a questioner. I really am intrigued by how energy, how all this works, and I have always been. So I've always been on that nosy hunt, um, and and what I kept sort of with that was another part to it would show up and another part. And yeah, it's just been, it's an insane thing. But the way that I see the cellular memory now, even that shifted for me, is like I feel like they are individual portal. So when we connect in and align in with what it is that's sitting in that portal, in that little doorway, when we go into that little doorway, there's something that resonates. And we've become aligned with that part of self that's experiencing that, like a timeline, And so yeah, and recently it's seeing more future self. And it's like, okay, that experience that I can feel happening with that experience there feels in alignment, or not quite maybe, for what I might like to bring forward into this reality. And so it's that thing of, okay, we will align with that more and see what happens. But
It's
yeah,
interesting. That's what I want to ask is how do you, so going into that cellular memory of a past, or whatever, it's not past, but
yeah,
that other
experience.
life,
Yeah.
that experience, timeline, how does that assist you in the body that you are in this life? Like, how can you find a way to go, okay, well, is this in alignment with me? How does this assist me to be more true to my purpose, my mission, my self-expression, so
Yeah.
on?
The frequency. So when we have, like, even though and this is again a bit head trippy, but when you, and for some, not all, but when we have an experience here, right? And we might feel like, oh yeah, we're all raising our frequency. We're all coming through from 3D supposedly to 5D and higher. We've all been more than 5D. We're multi-dimensional. And we drop in and out all the time. We're in 3D, and then we're not in 3D. We're moving in and out of that all the time from different experiencing, but the emotional space that we run and hold. So even our organs can be at a totally different frequency to what the rest of our body might be vibing at. So, we might have a higher frequency feeling that we're sitting in nature and everything's blissful and we're in that beautiful alignment. We're getting all the goods, it feels wonderful. We're in heart, yet our liver's still vibing at 2D or 3D or whatever it might be. It's like it has something sitting in it. So when we move into the space of that, so we go into the liver and there's that frequency sitting there. Well, what is that that's holding it in that space? And for me, that's been an incredible journey in finding how these things fit with the organs itself or the space. Like, you know, um, our knees are pride and ego. Our hips are, if we have hip problems, then it's about no hip hooray. Diabetes is, we need more sweetness in our life. So there's and those things align, like they really do. They come into effect, they affect us. So for us to move ourselves through and work on those areas within the cells that are holding those denser frequencies, and that was my journey my whole life. It was like, right, I'm going to get you all. Like, I'm on this mission. I'm just going to clean you all out. And the multiple times that I've gone into my own cellular memory, it's just been insane. But it's been an improvement every single time I've released something that kept taking me back in to a denser state. So it's allowing our physical body to bring more light into it. And once we bring more light into the cells, it then can go through into DNA, which starts altering the whole program. So it's Yeah, it's a cool thing. I loved working out, and I don't know a lot about it at all, but I know enough to make change on how the body works with light, how it transforms us, you know. And bless David Smith for bringing out these, light wave patches. They're a light activation patch that is absolutely accelerating people's bodies in light function and healing them naturally, like actually activating the natural healing ability that our body has and always has had into gear. And I learnt a lot about that through the cellular memory, yes, but also through actually chanting light, bringing more light into my body to a point where I thought I left a light on one night when I went to bed. And I went out to find where the light was because I don't like light. It's like, at night I like a darker room. And I actually realized there wasn't a light on anywhere. And it wasn't until I was in the hallway that I realized I was actually glowing. It was my light that was it was there. And I was, oh my God, this actually really works. And what was happening also is like I've broken a lot of bones and every illness and disease have a secondary gain. So we have something, we have it for a reason. It gives us something. And so I broke a lot of bones. I had multiple broken arms and collarbones and split. Honestly, I did so much. And over life, I've had 17 broken bones. And they
Wow.
got worse as I got older. But why I did that, because we do this to ourselves. So I was breaking my own bone, not consciously. Unconsciously, I'm out there just doing my thing. But when I looked at what did I gain from this gave me peace from my bullies. So instead of when I had a broken bone, my brother left me alone. My mum nurtured me, which she always did anyway, but my brother left me alone. And then when I got into abusive relationship, I'd break a leg. That would give me my time out from the abuser. So when I was chanting light, bringing it in, I smashed two toes on my foot. And it was through having a rant. It was 2012. Everybody was crossing fingers, going, oh, it's not a change. It's not the end of the world. It's just, change of consciousness, but they all had their fingers crossed behind their back. And I'm going, this was really racking me. And this was my own ego stuff going on. But I was like, actually, you're teachers, you're healers, and you're standing there with that faith that isn't faith. You haven't got the faith. You're trying to hope that it's not going to be the end of the world, it's not going to crash and burn. And it just ranted. I went into this rant within myself, and I'm like, oh my God, how much is this going to alter the timeline shift that we're trying to do? With everyone crossing fingers, actually not really truly consciously believing it, knowing it within their body. And I really knew it. And I was like, come on, you guys. Anyway, I was having this little rant, and the still fell hardwood still on my porch, and it was all slow motion. In my head, I'm going, move your foot, Mandy. My foot didn't move. It was like, no, we have to go through this. Obviously, I didn't think that at the time, but Anyway, smashed these toes. I wallowed for 12 hours because I was like, shit, I haven't broken a bone for years, and here I am and knowing I create it. So it was like, okay, why did I do this? What was behind all that? And so when I went into the conversation, I repaired the conversation in respect to, worked on the emotion, looked at my own ego, and it's that thing of impatience. Hurry up, come on. And so then what I did was I went into the toes and I actually repaired them. I had X-ray. My daughters were on my case. So I went and got an X-ray. I said, look, I know what I've done. They won't be able to do anything for them, their toes. And sure enough, it was just sticking your foot in a moon boot and it'll be 6 or 7, 8 weeks or whatever, and you should be right. um, so anyway, I came back. The guy said to me with the X-ray, the doctor said, you haven't just broken them, you've actually smashed these bones, in your okay. So of course that was going to take longer. And so the next day I was like, you know what you can do here. So I actually went into first the conversation, and worked, transmuted the emotion connected, and then went into the actual bone and in the toes and repaired the toes. And I had students, I was running development classes then. They came and they saw my foot. I'd only just done it that morning and it was black and blue, swollen up, could hardly walk on it. And then the next day it had gone back to normal except for bruising. And they walked in, they went, "Oh my God, what's happened?" I said, "I repaired the toes." And I should have gone back and got another x-ray. You don't do that stuff, eh? But I have witnesses for my proof. But yeah, and it was like that's the sort of stuff we can do, but we don't believe we can. So yeah, it's been exciting.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, there's so much potential within us. We're infinite beings, aren't we? So, define infinity. We can't. So, you
Exactly.
know, the more we get ourselves out of the way, I like to say.
Yeah.
Um, and I have, I've done similar things, not in comparison or the same, but yeah, healed teeth, that the dentist said this is done, we're gonna have to pull it out. And I'm like, I'm already lost a few teeth. I don't want to lose another one in there. It's okay, just leave it with me,
Yeah.
and with intent healed it and yeah, totally fine. Of course, still got my teeth, never been a problem. They were, decayed and rotten and everything and yeah, and other things that so yeah, it's interesting. I find fascinating how for me, there's some things I can really just step into that
Yeah.
and see what we are capable of. And then the other times it's like, oh no, I'm just going to stay on my human story and
Yeah.
plod along and make it difficult. And
I know, eh? And those times are necessary too, in many ways, like so many
yeah,
people want this world to just go away. And it's like, but
oh,
if you look back over your life, all the kaka you went through taught you so much. And
mhm,
these people, there's still a lot of people in this world that need all that stuff that's going on out there.
very much. Yeah.
It's just not going to go away. We're shifting ourselves through it
Mhm.
and onto better things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to journey through it. That's it. We're on a journey and you've got to have the lessons and the learnings and move through the densities. You can't just click your fingers because then you haven't learned anything, you haven't really fully experienced, you haven't fully embodied or had the experience of the wholeness of what that is you need to experience. So you
Yeah.
can't bypass all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you can't, as much as you'd like to, because it is uncomfortable when you're going through something like that, and those movements where you're looking into your shadow work and things, but otherwise it's a bit of fun, really.
Yes. Yeah, there's always a blessing, isn't it? When we learn to relate from a more conscious place and we see life is happening for us, we get to see the blessings within whatever we've experienced,
Mm,
and it's not to ignore it or be naive or say it's okay to be abused, for instance, or whatever, but
yeah.
there are always beauty and blessings within all these experiences. So
Yeah.
yes, it's been a wonderful sharing. I'd just like to ask you, was there anything you'd like to share with the listeners before we close up? Because yeah, it's been gorgeous and I'm sure we could carry on this on and on.
True. No, it has been lovely. Thank you. I think really the main thing for me to say really is about just getting out in nature, ground yourself in, like actually earth yourself into the body, like completely, because yeah, a lot of are just not present. And I know that it can feel uncomfortable when we come back into body properly, and particularly, like I was saying, if we've got physical pain, or emotional pain. But there's so much help out there now. There's so many people that can assist through those spaces. So reach out. It's time to pay attention to self more. I just think dedicate life to your life now. That's where I'm up to. It's like I've done all this feels like for everyone else for a long time, and I took myself into consideration at times, but not fully. And now I feel like it's really time to dedicate my life to me more.
Beautiful. Yeah. Well,
Mm,
we all have such important, unique codex. So the more we care for ourselves and bring those through, the more assistance we are for the greater good of all, eh?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a joy.
Amazing journey. It's such so thank you for sharing this. It's been really, really beautiful and yeah, wonderful to have you on today.
Oh, thank you. Such a pleasure. And yeah, we'll return it.
Yes, that's it. Okay, so thank you everyone for listening today. Been great to share Mandy's light with you all and hope you're doing well and we yeah, I wish you well on your journey and sending you so much love and blessings. Go well.